Hello and welcome back to the channel today. In today's video, what I wanted to talk about was about finding some simplicity in your images and not overcomplicating things. I think one of the things that I did when I first started doing photography was that I would often overcomplicate my images, trying to get too many things into the frame or the composition, or over editing my frames. So what I'm going to do is, obviously, I'm going to show you a few images on the computer. We'll discuss how I've simplified those images and took away some of the less complicated parts of the image, and we'll go from there. So in this first image, as you can probably see, it's just a image of a track going down to a tree that's just not far from me in a place called Crank. And with this first image, I'm talking about overcomplicating my editing. When I first started doing photography, I was a big fan of the Nick collection. It's been through various hands. It's now in the hands of DxO. And the one thing about the Nick collection, it's a very one-click solution. It would just apply any type of it would apply certain type of settings to each image, regardless of what that image looked like. And one of the things I found with doing those types of using those types of solutions, presets and one-click solutions, is that each image will look different. So some images it works for, and some images it doesn't. So while presets are good, they're not a one-stop solution to make your images look great. You still have to know how to manage and edit an image, even though you're using a preset. So a preset can be a very good starting point to editing an image, but it's not a one-stop solution. You can't just apply it and expect an image to look great, because it just doesn't work like that, and you still have to learn to edit it. So with this image, I used a one of the presets, and also it was one of the presets that did a bit of colour toning as well. And I think what it did was, with this image, I think it overcomplicated the editing with actually using a preset instead of actually doing some fine details and treating the image in certain parts. So for example, in the tree, in the background, it's very dark and you just can't see. It sort of disappears because of the way the preset's been applied. And also the sky looks, I think it looks a bit flat and a bit dull because it's applied that preset to the whole image as well. That's another thing. It's applying a preset to an whole image from top to bottom. So sometimes you have like a foreground that can be very bright and a sky that'll be very dark, or the opposite way around, a foreground that'll be very dark and a sky that's very bright. So it's one thing I've learnt about my editing is to treat different parts of the image in a different way. So a sky, you would darken the sky. Sometimes you would brighten up the foreground. You would add a little touch of editing in certain places. So the first thing I've learnt about simplifying my images is not to over edit an image or use it's essentially use a preset that I thought was actually simplifying my editing, but it was actually overcomplicating it, because I didn't know how to manipulate the tools in a certain way. So for me, overcomplicating my editing was something that I did unnecessarily without thinking that I was doing it. Okay, so for these next two images, the one thing I've learnt about overcomplicating my photography in these is by thinking about what's in the frame, and also thinking about composition more. Because obviously the image on the right was taken I think it was about 2 years ago now, and then the image on the left here, this is the one I took in a recent video a couple of weeks ago, and they're in very similar positions as to where I'm pointing the camera. So you would notice that if there was no fog on this image, you would see parts of that wall and the bridge. This image is slightly further round than the second image, but you would still see parts of this composition, and you would see the distractions. So one of the great things about it is actually fog is a great remover of distractions in images. But one thing you have to think about in composition is also thinking about every element in part of your frame. So for example, the wall and the railway bridge in this image, I think causes I think it makes it messy and it makes it complicated. Whereas and also the foreground, because there's the fishing pontoon and also the leaves and the bricks, I do think it makes it very complicated. It's a very messy scene. Whereas because of the fog that's removing some of the distractions from the image in this image on the left, I do think it actually removes a lot of the distractions, so you're focusing on the foreground interest that's taking you over to the barge that's shrouded in mist, and adds a bit of mystery. So one of the things I've learned about simplifying my images is try not to get too much in the frame, in the composition, and think about distractions in every part of your image, especially distractions that are on the edge of the scene. So in this case, if you see this corner here, the edge is just cropped off a little bit, which I think makes it distraction, and also the wall is very bright, so it's taking you away from the foreground, and the foreground as well is quite bright as well, so that's distracting. So I think this image on the right is very there's far too many elements in it. It's very overcomplicated and very distracting. Okay, so in this final image, this is an image of a local pond that I have just down the road from me, and many of the few swans that grace that pond. And one of the things that this image, the one thing I love about this image is because it's so simplified. It's very, very simple. You've got one strong subject and nothing behind it. And this image was actually done using a technique where you actually drop the shutter speed down, and it actually darkens the background. But one of the things that I love about this image is because it's so simplified and I've removed all the distractions from the background, it's actually made it I think a very, very beautiful image. The reflection of the swan still works, but you're basically putting on the main focus of the the swan, and the nothing else is distracting this image. So you can use, the moral of this image is to use your camera in such a way to remove complications or distractions from your image. I hope you found that quick look through them 4 or 5 images that I've brought up on the screen, and about overcomplicating your images. I think it's something that all photographers are guilty of, trying to try too hard with our photos, or try to use every setting in the camera, or we also jump into things like Lightroom, and we want to use everything, and we want to use slide every setting and whack every setting up to the excess. So I think one of the things you can use with simplicity in your images is actually finding a little bit of restraint in your images, and that only comes with practice and time. So one of the reasons why I also wanted to do this video was that to say that if there's some beginners out there who are struggling with their photography and thinking that the photography is not good enough, I just wanted to, reiterate the fact that we all have to start somewhere, and hopefully seeing some of these images that are not the best in terms of composition and editing makes you think that we all can improve. So I hope it helps some people out there who are starting off in photography and who are a bit despondent about the fact that they're seeing all these fantastic images online and their photography is not up to that same standard. It's a point that I think that it gives us all a bit of hope and a bit of light to say that even some of the more experienced photographers out there, and I feel I'm at a point where I'm not quite a beginner, but I'm not quite an expert. I'm sort of in between, still learning things, and the one thing you will always do is you will constantly be learning how to do photography. So I hope you found that useful today, that little skip through them images, a little chat with them. And if you like what you see, please leave a comment below, give me a thumbs up on the video. I'd love you to subscribe if you're not also subscribed already, and to stick around and watch more videos, and hopefully I will see you again next time.